It's time for week 2 at the PPL, and this week we're going up against my fiancée Ellie and her Shanghai Dragons. Ellie is a fantastic battler with a recent championship in the PBA to her name and one of the scariest teams in the league, meaning this is definitely going to be one of our toughest games of the season. If you aren't interested in Team Builder, then I'll leave timestamps in the description and you can skip straight ahead to the battle, but I'd absolutely advise watching it to understand why we're bringing what we're bringing, what the game plan is, and also the trades that we made going into week 2. So yeah, before we get into Team Builder, we need to go over these trades that I made prior to the game. During building for week 1, I really felt some of the weaknesses of this draft, and despite a good showing in week 1, I feel like these will really help our squad moving forward. 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿𝙊𝙎 was something I was really looking forward to using, but sometimes sacrifices need to be made to benefit the squad, and sadly you'll be dropping it and picking up 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿 in its place. 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿 keeps a few things that 𝙕𝘼𝘋𝘿 gave us: a good special attacker, good bulk on the special side, and a psychic type. Most importantly though, it gives us a real fairy type as well as some excellent utility and a better speed tier at the cost of a more bulky option and a Terra Captain, as 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿 will not be one, as another one we picked up will take that spot instead. Another thing I wanted to address was my electric weakness, so Duraludon, Gligar and Hisuian Avalugg all departed to make way for Flygon, which will be our second Terra Captain. Flygon is much more likely to come to games than the other three combined and genuinely is a good low tier Terra Captain. Much like 𝙕𝘼𝘋𝘿 before, it's definitely a mon that could use the Terra, but it doesn't need it since 𝙕𝑎𝑔𝑒 is so frequently wanting to be the primary user. Flygon actually can still do its job with its regular typings. Despite losing quite a bit of bulk, Flygon does give us another sweeper, pivot and stealth rocker all in one, combining quite a few of the attributes I liked from the free Pokemon that I dropped, but it also opened up another 2-point option, and well, at this point we had a really glaring fairy weakness, so I really needed a steel type, and Terra 𝙕𝘼𝑒𝑟 was the best thing left on the board, albeit it's probably not the most ideal Pokemon to be drafting. With strong abilities and a good attack stat, 𝙕𝘼𝑒𝑟 is a bit of an underrated threat, but I'm under no illusions that it's a fix to my fairy problem, so this is something I will most likely address in a future week. Now onto the matchup, and Ellie's team has some very clear upsides. Nearly every Pokemon has some form of hazards, so I fully expect to be fighting against them this week. Garchomp is an extremely potent threat against our squad, since our fairy type isn't really able to reliably check it. Scale Shot Swords Dance is an excellent win con for her. On top of that, she has one of the best Terra Captains in the league in Thundurus Firion, a Pokemon we have, quite frankly, no switch-ins for, especially since Terra negates a lot of our potential checks. Greninja can be a hazard setter, Protean pivot, or even a Battle Bond sweeper here, making it very difficult to prepare for. Our best chance of being able to deal with it is just to see how she opts to play with it, and that probably being the biggest tell on what kind of set it is. Metagross is arguably the most buff Pokemon this gen, and is capable of trading 1-for-1 for anything on our team. Galarian Weezing is a strong foil to a lot of our physical attackers, and Hariyama is a low tier Terra threat that Ellie really knows how to use. Ogerpon Cornerstone is always difficult to prepare for, and the combination of Power Whip and Ivy Cudgel blast through our team, so it could also be a Spike's pivot, it could be an SD sweeper, it could be many different things against our team because we realistically just don't switch into it. Even Ellie's low tier picks in Braviary, Terra Tatsugiri and Sableye can come to this game and cause us some problems. However, Torracat and Solosis I think are very unlikely. Maybe Torracat just happens to show up. The team I expect to see is Garchomp, Greninja, Thundurus, Metagross or Hariyama, Galarian Weezing and Ogerpon Cornerstone. So a lot of my prep will go into those 7 mons. With the sheer amount of hazards and Pokemon I struggle to reliably check, the game plan is to play fast to avoid losing to hazards in the long game, and also to play aggressively to avoid Ellie's threats from having too much time to set up and have a major impact. So the lead plan is to attempt to at least claim a 1-for-1 if not better, to position ourselves in the best possible spot for the rest of the game, whilst also punishing any kind of passive hazard setter lead from Ellie. So a Terra Fairy Swords Dance 𝙕𝑎𝑔𝑒𝑟 is what I've decided will be our dedicated league. With our investment, we're able to take a crit Ivy Cudgel from Ogerpon after we Terra, and since Ogerpon really does have a free slot for spikes here, we can SD turn 1 freely and either get the +2 speed if she cudgels, or a second Swords Dance if she opts to spike, with the Jaboka Berry guaranteeing the sturdy gets broken as soon as she hits us, and Bitter Blade will always be able to pick up a KO in return. Shadow Sneak allows us to out prioritize a Metagross Bullet Punch or a Terra Hariyama Bullet Punch, and gets off a big hit against both, and Terra Blast hits Ellie's resist to Bitter Blade and Garchomp, Greninja and Hariyama without Terra for super effective damage. There's a very real chance that with the right lead, 𝙕𝑎𝑔𝑒𝑟 can actually just sweep from turn 1, however it seems unlikely, and also if we don't get the lead right, then we can always use a set at any time, try and get in with that free switch into 𝙕𝘖𝘋, or realistically any of her physical attackers. The only truly bad lead for us will be Thunderous, as we don't really want to take a big special hit, so Assault Vest Rillaboom is here as some kind of cope check to Thunderous early game. Terra, Poison, Fairy and Flying are all definite options on Thunderous, so I don't really believe Rilla will be able to be a consistent answer, but it may be able to do some damage to Ellie's team before going down, and unless Ceruledge just sweeps, Rillaboom is going to go down in this game. Grassy Glide is handy to scare off her offensive threats, in particular Greninja and a Garchomp after a Scale Shot. Wood Hammer does the best damage to a Levitate Weezing, whilst Knockoff and U-Turn provide utility and a means of avoiding the awful matchup to Weezing that we find ourselves in. I don't believe the Garchomp will be running EQ this week, but if it does, then the terrain at least will have the ability to nerf that. However, I think it's more likely to just be Scale Shot, Stone Edge and one other filler move, or potentially just sub an SD in those last two slots. I also feel that, like, of the three types that Thunderous I really felt could be, Poison was going to be the least likely of those Terra types, and also Galarian Weezing would have a good chance of being Levitate, so I want to bring Toxic Spikes to make it easier for me to get the chip for our win cons, and also to cripple Ellie's setup options. So Sneasler comes here to provide them for the team. There was part of me that really wanted to bring a choice band set, but with Metagross and Galarian Weezing being a really solid defensive core, it was always going to be really difficult for me to click a single move and not end up losing momentum. So instead I opted for a pads pivot to be able to set up T-Spikes, get out, or get my damage on Garchomp or Weezing without having the Rocky Helmet come into play. Close Combat and Gunshot really hits everything on Ellie's team for good damage, with U-Turn providing the pivot move that allows me to bring in any of my next 3 mons relatively freely, whilst potentially forcing switches after T-Spikes go up to help spread the poison around. Next up we have Zapdos with a Choice Scarf, and this is one of the very few checks that I have to Metagross, Garchomp and Hariyama, so there's a lot of pressure on it, and defensive sets could quite easily get worn down very easily, especially if boots get knocked off, so I opted for a different approach with Choice Scarf, allowing me to hit Garchomp hard before it gets a Scale Shot off, but also to let me hit Greninja, Thunderous and 𝙕𝘖𝘋 as long as they don't have a speed boost, since all 3 can do massive damage to my team. Not to mention, Ellie has virtually no resist to Hurricane, especially if Thunderous's Terra is away from a resist, so Hurricane is very spammable. Heat Wave hits her other resist in Metagross as well as, of course, Thunderous, and then Thunderbolt and Volt Switch are here, but honestly I don't know how much they'll be clicked, since Hurricane is always going to be the better option. Moving on to our main win con, and Flygon with Terra Steel on this team ticks multiple boxes actually. Terra Steel with Levitate walls Garchomp stabs and likely Stone Edge coverage. It also happens to wall 𝙕𝘖𝘋 stabs and a potential Stomping Tantrum coverage, as well as almost anything that Metagross and Galarian Weezing can do. Dragon Dance then has a lot of opportunities to be set up. Since I'm immune or resistant to hazards, and a combination of Scale Shot, Earthquake and Terra Blast hits the entirety of Ellie's team for an OHKO after a small amount of chip, of course providing we don't have the grassy terrain up and nerfing our Earthquake, Flygon has the opportunity to put in some numbers here. If we do have to use our Terra early on with Ceruledge, as the plan actually thinks that we're going to, then as long as Weezing is removed or has shown that it's not Levitate, then we actually don't need Terra on Flygon at all, and can still act as a potent setup sweeper regardless. It just means that our chances to set up are a little bit lower because the Dragon ground typing isn't as good as Steel here. The last mod on the team will be Darkrai, as Ellie has a really hard time switching into Dark type, with her only resists really being Greninja and Galarian Weezing, and neither wanting to take that big special hit. Realistically, every time Darkrai comes in, it gets a kill, and so Dark Pulse is pretty much just going to be the click every time. However, I opted for Ice Beam and Focus Blast as coverage this week, as it allows me to hit Garchomp and Greninja for an OHKO respectively, whilst helping to deal with a potential Terra Steel Hariyama and a Spadef Braviary after a Calm Mind. I opted for a Chople Berry to potentially bait in and take down either a Low Kick Greninja, a Focus Blast Thunderous, or just any fighting move from Hariyama, since I feel there's a good chance of Battle Bond Greninja, and also a good chance of it getting activated. We're bulky enough to live anything from +1 and revenge it, assuming we hit the Focus Blast. And that's going to be the team for this week. If we don't get an early lead, then the plan may get a little less comfortable, but if we are able to make early exchanges, then I think there's a good chance of a big win due to Flygon and Ceruledge being able to snowball really quickly. However, I really do need to be careful around her top 3, as they have a very good chance of being able to set up or just deal big damage and getting out of control very quickly. As for the team members staying on the bench this week, Blastoise once again was the 7th Mon. fitting a good defensive slot on the team, but just once again lack the offensive pressure to really hurt 𝙕𝘼𝑋's tankier team. Rapid Spin could absolutely have been useful, but the lack of answers I have on my draft for Thundurus and 𝙕𝘋𝘆 just meant Blastoise would actually really be dead weight against a third of her team, and would actually put pressure onto our other team members that realistically I could do with avoiding. 𝙕𝘋𝘆 was very much an option here too, filling a similar role to Rillaboom, with it being able to take a hit probably better than Rillaboom, and also being able to hit a lot more than Rillaboom could, but I just ended up preferring the pivot and the priority that Rillaboom gave me. Not to mention Metagross could so easily come in on 𝙕𝘋𝘆 every time, and it meant that I probably would lose an item from knockoff from either Metagross or Tera Steel 𝙕𝘼𝑋, and it'd be very difficult for us to ever click a button and get too much value. I also didn't feel the game would go in a direction where Healing Wish would be too useful, so for now 𝙕𝘋𝘆 has to wait for its debut. I feel Porygon and Dedenne aren't really worth going over every week, unless there was a genuine reason for them not being included, so the last mon considered was Berserker, and I really did consider it. It gave me a really strong potential breaker, but in the end Flygon with Tera Steel did most of what it could do, but just better. And with its lack of speed and Spadef and actually quite bad resists in this game, Berserker may just have never been able to get a valuable hit off and may have just died, and I don't need just a Sackmon in this game. But that's going to be it for the team builder. Let's go ahead and get into the battle. Okay, so here we are for the battle against 𝙕𝘼𝑋. Week 2 of PPL. She brings roughly what I was expecting. They're honestly, outside of maybe Metagross over Weezing, because I felt like Weezing actually could have been a little bit too passive in this game, everything else just looked really, really good into me. 𝙕𝘋𝘆 Cornerstone and Thundee in particular are really difficult for my team to deal with. I'm kind of glad that they didn't bring Metagross, because that's one less thing to take a Grassy Glide. So we realistically just need her to Terra her Thundurus, but I don't know if she will. I think there's probably a better chance for Terraing the 𝙕𝘼𝑋 into Budget Iron Hands, because it's Terra Electric, rather than the Fairy on her Thundee, but at the same time I feel like you're going to have to, like, almost definitely going to have Terra Blast Fairy if you're going to go into a Fairy type, right? So yeah, plan I think will always remain the same. She could lead off with Gren, but she could also lead off with 𝙕𝘋𝘆, and I think there's a good chance of an 𝙕𝘋𝘆 lead because I don't have too much to be able to do with that. And I think I just want to lead off with my Ceruledge because it actually puts me in the best position to try and get a couple of kills, or at least get some big damage off on something. I think we'll go ahead and we'll lock that in. Good luck, have fun to 𝙕𝘼𝑋, and hopefully this is a clean game. Like, I don't care whether I win or lose, as long as it's a clean game, is what I meant to say. So she actually leads off with the Thundee, which is not what I was expecting at all. Okay, so I'm going to make the Rilla switch just off rip, because I don't particularly want to take this hit right now, and as much as the plan was to lead off with this and try and break the sturdy on 𝙕𝘋𝘆, I think now is not the time. Now is not the time. Yeah, it's going to be difficult for her to actually decide what she wants to go for. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Sludge Bomb predicting my Terra, because it also covers the switch into this. So are we going to see Volt Switch? Okay. Tiny bit surprised at that, but not overly. Is that Specs? We are AV, so obviously, like, we probably don't take too much damage. I think that put me down to like 299, which is 17%. That's got to be Specs, right? She knows I don't have much to switch into that mon. It would make a lot of sense. Not enough for it to be Specs. Maybe Magnet? Sent Albag the Fries. That's going to be Weezing. Okay. It's Misty Surge. I thought it might be Levitate, but that's fine. Not too concerned about this Pokemon. Do I think she'll be fast? There's honestly, there's definitely a chance. So there's a big part of me that just wants to go out to Zapdos. It kind of covers most things that she wants to go for, and Zapdos is a bit of a luxury in this game in the sense that it's kind of just here. It will outspeed certain things, but at the same time, it's just kind of vibing. Yeah, Misty Surge is very interesting. Definitely not what I was expecting. But I may actually have to save the Terra for my Flygon, simply because there's Terra Fairy on the Thundee. But we'll see. I'm not going to show the U-turn just yet, partially because I don't want to take potential Rocky Helmet damage, but also just in case this thing is weirdly fast. She just Strange Teams. That's not going to do too much. Actually, that does quite a bit, and gets the Confusion. That was a lot of damage. Is that offensive? Put me down to 248, which to 31, it's either an absolute max roll or this is somewhat offensive. Either way, just going to click Hurricane, I think, in this situation, and just get my damage off if possible, on something, the chances of me actually hitting this Hurricane are so incredibly slim. But you know, sometimes you just gotta at least attempt to get the hit off, right? You know what? I might be the greatest to ever do it. Okay, so I have two options here. I can go into 𝙕𝘼𝙋 or I can go into you. Do I think you Terra Fairy in front of this mon? Absolutely not. There is never a reason to, so I'm going to try and make an aggressive play here. If she calls it, then that's just a fantastic read. And I can't be mad at all. Like, she may think I want to preserve my Zapdos a little bit more than this, because it's pretty good into things like 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿. So she may go for the Terra and just Terra Blast. But yeah, we're just going to Flygon, try and prevent her from getting the momentum if possible. As she does Terra. Okay. You only Terra if you Terra Blast here. Should have just stayed in and clicked Hurricane, it would have died. But, you know, it'd be what it'd do. She does Terra Blast. Great play. Really, really good play. There's no way I live this, right? Just barely. Barely holding on. Yeah, that was a fantastic read. I don't have a good fairy switch in fairness. So it does make a lot of sense. But yeah, should have just stayed in. Lesson learned. Is this still a useful Pokemon to have in any means? Not really. Terra Fairy, Terra Blast, into my Flygon, the roll. So maybe it's just timid, and the roll on 𝙕𝘼𝙋 was a weird one. Maybe a max roll, I don't fully know. But I don't have a switch in. So I'll go for a Dragon Dance in case she just decides to switch, but unfortunately Flygon is going to go down. That was actually a really good mon into his team, but you know, you win some, you lose some. And I will just go back out into 𝙕𝘼𝙋 and double out. I think I just double into Zap. Yeah, I'll just double into Zap, but yeah, I should have absolutely stayed in and tried to Hurricane this thing. Is going to withdraw. Are we going to see the wheezing? Sure are. Okay. So now the Hurricane switch-ins are completely gone. And there should be at least good damage on anything on her team. I don't think there's any reason for me to not to Hurricane here. A Heat Wave could also have worked, but yeah, like onto the 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿 would have done very little, and also can't burn it because of the Misty Terrain, so I think Hurricane is just going to be the best play all round. And I do need to get damage on this Wheezing at some point. This will be the damage on the Wheezing that I need. She goes for Memento, okay. So, 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿 coming in. I assume she's going to take this opportunity to try and set up. But I do still have the Terra Fairy on Ceruledge, which I can actually use a bit more freely now. Finchy Lad. Yeah, that's going to be the 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿. So I'm going to pivot through my Rillaboom here. Could be a sub, but I just stay in. Consistently attack. Scale Shot. Is it loaded dice? I assume it will be. It sure is. Because it's a -1 attack or defense, I'm literally just going to click Grassy Glide. If she SDs and it 2-hit KOs, I'm like 99% sure. And then we're probably not in a great spot against this. But wow, that does absolutely no damage. Perhaps I should have Wood Hammered. She just Scale Shots again. Okay. Okay, well that's fine. That I can deal with. This thing at +2, I do have to go into you. And do I need to SD right now? I don't think so. She should call the Terra here. There's no reason to not call the Terra, right? So yeah, I'll just go for it. She's gonna withdraw. Okay, so I could have SD'd. Goes out into me IRL, which is gonna be the Hariyama. Does Terra Blast 2-hit KO this? Is going to be the question. Is it going to be a 2-hit KO? Who can really say? We aren't super attack invested, so maybe not. Okay, yeah, that's 2-hit KO. Leftovers as well. potentially Bullet Punch, but I feel like Bullet Punch is not good for her. So I'm just going to Terra Blast again. Because if she Bullet Punches, she gives me the -1 defense, yes. Maybe it's enough actually to put me in range of Cudgel. I don't know for sure though. If I had SD'd on that turn, oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, so Ceruledge's going to pick up the one on 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿𝙊𝙎 here. And if she goes into Ogerpon, I will just SD. I guess if it Trailblazers, is that bad? In the grassy terrain, maybe? By maybe, I mean pretty much definitely, honestly. Sustail comes out instead, though. Okay. Oh shit, need to drop my Joy-Cons. So I think it goes almost without saying this is probably my Wincon now. Are you Scarfed? Is that why you Terra Fairy'd? That would make sense. I think getting out my T-Spikes at this point might be a Wincon. It might be a Wincon. Can I live? So I think a Sludge Bomb maybe comes out here. Is losing you really bad? It's not the best, but it's not the worst, I think. At this point, I think the game plan has to be set up late game T-Spikes. And then attempt just Volt Switches, okay. Does do quite a lot. And then yeah, just attempt to win with Ceruledge or maybe even Darkrai. But I think that Thunder is Scarfed from the way that she's playing it. So it looks more like it's going to be a Ceruledge endgame angle, which is only possible really if she is Scarfed or not Scarfed on Gren. I don't think she'd be Scarfed Gren. The Finchy Lad's going to come back out. Going to get that recovery, and the grass terrain has disappeared. So I'm just going to click Hurricane here, because I think I do actually just need some damage on this. If she SDs, then yeah, we're pretty cooked. So I do need to Hurricane, and I do need to land. We do land the Hurricane, love to see that. That's almost dead. We do get a Confusion. Confusion for Confusion. This one will now hurt her in Confusion because that's just how the game it's just the that's just the rules of the game. I don't hit myself, I break through. Ellie gets incredibly unlucky. I do apologise. That fucking sucks. Now I don't know what she was going for. If she Scale Shot, then we go Ceruledge. If she SD'd, then it became a lot more of an issue. Okay, so we're gonna find out here whether or not this mon is Scarfed. Because I'm going to use this opportunity to just click Hurricane. It is Scarf. Okay. So does T-Bolt take out my Thundurus? And by Thundurus, I mean Sneasler. No, it doesn't. So I think you always should T-Bolt here. I'm just going to click Gunk. Yeah. Does a lot of damage. We are going to land a Gunk. So the Scarf Thunder is down. And it's Ogerpon and something else that I can't remember. Ogerpon and Gren, neither of which are particularly nice options for me to have to deal with. 𝙕𝘼𝙋𝘿𝙊𝙎 comes in. There's a world in which this just kind of wins. I think I may end up having to hit a Focus Blast. She played this like it's Battle Bond, so I'm going to assume it's Battle Bond. +1 if it's Hydro. It's not a good roll for my favour. I think regardless, I've just got a... yeah, extra sensory. Okay, so it's Protean. That's good to know. Like, you always take a hit. I think I have to go into you. Because you're Psychic type, you shouldn't want to hit me. Because Shadow Sneak will just do too much. I'm going to click SD. If Ogerpon comes in, that's kind of worked to the game plan. It was meant to be off lead. If she stays in Sludge Bombs, or Sludge Waves, then she stays in the Sludge Waves. But it's still a very tight endgame. I've got lucky in this one, I can't deny that. But she just extra sensories again. It's not going to do a lot of damage. I think that's out of Cudgel range as well. So now I just Sneak. And this should always kill, because she's a Psychic type. Sash. Good bring. Really good bring. I Sneak again. Okay, so Bitter Blading probably was the better play there. Now, Ogerpon, do I 2-hit KO? Because, like, there's two potential situations here, right? Like, Cudgel will knock me out. It always knocks me out. Yeah, no, Sneak is always the play. Sneak's always the play. We get a crit, which all things considered, I don't think mattered because of the Jaboka Berry. It would have been in range of Darkrai regardless. And now I think it just comes down to a high roll crit. That's the only thing that will be able to take out my Darkrai here, or if she's adamant. But we're faster. We're always faster. I'll just click Ice Beam. And that's going to be a good game to Ellie. We have got pretty lucky in this one. Like, I can't deny that. The Garchomp hitting itself in confusion, I think, definitely was beneficial to me in all potential outcomes. But good game to Ellie. Please go make sure to check her out. We always have fantastic games. The Sash Gren was so good at the end game. I was not expecting that at all. But damn, 1-0 win. We're going to start the season 2-0, which is always nice. And I'm sorry for that confusion. But I can hear her shouting. I don't know what she's shouting, but to know what she's shouting, go check her out. Link will be down in the description below. She is a fantastic person, one of the most entertaining, funniest, and best looking people in Draft League. In fact, I would argue the best looking. But you know, True River is right there, so it's a 50-50, really a toss up. It's just dependent on your own favourite. But I'm waffling. If you enjoyed the battle, please leave a like, subscribe, and until next one, have a great day, guys. Peace.